Ancient technologies. Comments. So, the Great Pyramid of Giza is not a tomb. Soon I'll make a video. I got a couple other videos to do, but make a video about the Great Pyramid not being a tomb. So, of course, if it's not a tomb, what is it instead, right? So, right now, just wanted to point out that somebody, of course, left a comment about the Great Pyramid. And you know how it is. People always want to disagree and they want to say things that they heard someone else says instead of doing their own research and own due diligence. Like the idea, it is a tomb. They pulled bodies out of the tomb, out of the Great Pyramid, so that's why we know it's a tomb. Well, when you go to Google, you scroll down, you look up certain things. Number of bodies, obviously, is referring to number of bodies found in the pyramid. The Great Pyramid, it says no bodies have been found. And then who ordered the construction of the pyramid? That would be King Khufu, which means if it's his pyramid, which means it's supposed to be his tomb, right? Let's go with the idea that it's a tomb. That means he's supposed to be put in it, which means we should have found his body in it. But let's say his body was in it. It was a tomb, but in the past, someone took him out, and that's why it's empty when we started, searching in the tomb, which is why when you Google it, it says nobody's found. Yeah, nobody's found when we were looking for stuff in the pyramid because it was already empty by the time we looked at it. Because remember, the pyramids are very, very old. So, and the pyramids are above ground. So take that into consideration. People knew about the pyramids for a long, long, long time. So there's a possibility that people went in there and took stuff. Possible, right? Grave robbers or tomb raiders, as they call it. So it's possible that happened, which would explain why there was no bodies, right? So the main thing, this whole, it's a tomb because bodies were found. Well, that's incorrect because bodies were not found. Therefore, you can't use that as evidence as a tomb when there was no bodies found in there. We have, however, found bodies of pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings, which is literally a location where there's a whole bunch of tombs and a whole bunch of pharaohs there. If the whole idea that pyramids are tombs for pharaohs, then that means every pharaoh, let's say there was 50 pharaohs, that means there should be 50 pyramids on the Giza Plateau. I think there's roughly like 12, maybe 13 or more pyramids, but a lot of them are small, a lot of them are big, obviously. But the main thing is that you also think there would be standard. A lot of the pyramids were poorly built, so Great Pyramid is one of the few that is built very well. Sorry, so it doesn't give the idea that the pyramids were created by the same people. If we're going with the idea that the Egyptians are the ones that built the pyramids in the first place, or at least the Great Pyramid. I don't believe they did make the Great Pyramid specifically. I think they just saw it, found it, they're like, oh, this is cool. Try to learn how it was built and try to make their own afterwards. But that's for another conversation, right? So then back to why there's no body in there. So for those who don't know, Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt and the first female pharaoh of Egypt. And she was the last pharaoh because Rome defeated her. There was this whole love triangle thing. You can go Google her about what happened to her, right? But the thing is, she, ended up committing suicide because she was captured by the Roman Empire, and she didn't want to, bow down to the emperor. So she committed suicide. So she was obviously not going to be buried in her own pyramid, if pyramids are tombs, which also brings the question up, where's Cleopatra's pyramid? If every pharaoh is supposed to get a pyramid, where's the Cleopatra pyramid? You gotta think about that. Where's her pyramid? If every pharaoh, as soon as they become pharaoh, the construction of their tomb, quote unquote tomb, right? The pyramid gets started building. Where's hers at? You think you would have found a half-built pyramid with documentation, evidence. Since she's the last pharaoh, we should really, really have a lot of proof that she was the last, that, you know, that pyramid was created for her to be buried in, and there would be a lot of documentation, a lot of proof of her pyramid being constructed. I know it'd be hard to find old, ancient, you know, proof of the other pyramids constructions, but hers, since she's the last pharaoh, and this was during the time of Romans. That's why the Romans defeated, you know, her, right? So this was in Roman time. So if you search about the Roman time, right, the time period of the Romans, they documented what they created during that time period, and we still have proof of that. Where's her proof? Where's the stuff of her people creating her pyramid or creating anything during her time as a pharaoh? Not only during her time, but even the pharaoh before her. Because I doubt the pharaoh before her was Khufu, right? So here's a small little theory I had. What if, hypothetically, right, the reason why we don't have a Cleopatra pyramid half built, documentations of it, right, and why we haven't found a body inside Khufu's pyramid, which is the Great Pyramid itself, is maybe because that was her pyramid. As in, she decided to recycle. She decided to empty out the pyramid, take out all his shit, because maybe he was buried in there. And she's like, nah, I want it. So she kicked him out, evicted his dead ass out of the pyramid, Khufu's pyramid, and now she's claiming it for herself. So now it was supposed to be the Cleopatra pyramid. But, well, since she died of suicide in the Roman Empire, in Rome, because she was no longer in Egypt when she, you know, ended her life, she definitely wasn't going to be buried in the pyramid, which is why we didn't find her body in there at all, and didn't even find Khufu. For all we know, Khufu's body is in a coffin in the Nile River. Has anyone considered that? That Khufu's body might be in the Nile River? Because Cleopatra was like, yeah, take all the shit out of his pyramid, throw it into the Nile River, and make sure that pyramid's nice and clean for when I get buried in there. That could be a possibility. Remember, she's the last pharaoh. She can't say it was somebody else who, you know, tried to use the pyramid as a as a tomb. And that's if we're going with the tomb idea, that it was a tomb. So, with the fact that, you know, Cleopatra probably tried to repurpose it for herself, would explain, you know, certain details of why it's empty, you know, because she was recycling it. But there's other evidence that it's not a tomb. So let's talk about it not being a tomb. Was the fact that there's a lot of stains in there, chemical stains, that give the impression that it was not used for a tomb, unless they use chemicals and stuff like that as like booby traps to protect the tomb. But what's weird is the tomb was empty, right? Because, like I said, if Cleopatra was trying to use it, it would be empty until she goes in there. So there's no need to have traps, no need to have anything in there until her time of passing, which she passed before that could even happen. So it's not a tomb.